promise to live up to that, Albert. I want to thank the board for giving us this, tomorrow night, this wonderful opportunity to be here on the dais. I guess I'm here because my father and mother were immigrants from Ukraine and Russia. But actually, my father came here in 2 episodic events. You see, my grandfather and grandmother came here in the late 1800s. That was the first time. She was pregnant. 5 months later, she said to my grandfather, "You know, I miss that wonderful little town we lived in, Yampol. I think we should go back." Can you believe it? They went back. My father was born in Yampol, Ukraine. However, in 1905, war broke out between Japan and Tsarist Russia. It was known as the Russo-Japanese War of 1905, and was done over Manchuria. I don't know if you recall, but there was such a group called Cossacks, who were military arms of the Tsar. And they would sweep into small towns and sweeping up Jewish boys and young men for service in the front lines. And the Japanese carried a rifle called the Murata, which is an M13 rifle made in Tokyo, but it was a single-shot weapon. That means whoever was in the front line, the one shot got them, and then they'd have to reload. So guess what? The Jewish kids, given wooden military weapons, were then put in the front to absorb the first fusillade. They were fodder for onslaught. So Grandma and Grandpa Maltz said, "Oops, we made a mistake." And they returned for the second time to the United States. My father then was 17 years old. Well, why am I telling you this? Because Father of blessed memory always repeated to me a slogan that he loved. He would say, "Milton, only in America. Never forget that." And he also used to say, "I want to be a Yankee." And he didn't mean the New York Yankee, by the way. He meant an American Yankee. So here we are, you and I, sons and daughters of immigrants, overcoming poverty, a new language, a new world, but a world that offers freedom and opportunity. Education would become the priority. I'm the first one in our family to receive a college degree. So taking advantage of freedom and our entrepreneurial system became a way of life. So I'm going to give you a little background on freedom and entrepreneurship, which I think is so important to the future of this country. We moved from South Bend to Chicago, which was a major home to radio broadcasts. For those of you old enough to remember, before television, there was radio stories, dramas, such as Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy. Anybody remember that? A few of you. Terry and the Pirates, and the Breakfast Club, and so forth. Well, I had a high school teacher at Hyde Park. Her name was Kathy Clausen, and God bless her. We were reading Moby Dick, paragraph by paragraph, and she said, "Milton, I want you to stay after class." I said, "Why, what did I do wrong now?" And after class she said, "They're having auditions for Lady Make-Believe, Jack and the Beanstalk, and you will become Jack. I want you to audition." I said, "No, I don't think so. I probably will wind up being an architect." And she said, "I'll pay your car fare. I'll even get you off being a hall monitor, which is so boring." And I said, "Okay." Next thing I know, I became Jack in Jack and the Beanstalk. "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman." Remember that one? How could I forget those lines? The station was WBEZ FM, and I was intrigued by the quality of FM versus AM. Now this was 1944. And I asked one of the engineers, "We're here in the studio, but what about, where's the tower? Where's the transmitter?" He said, "It's atop the Morrison Hotel in downtown Chicago." I said, can I go? I was 14. He says, come on with me. Went up, and I saw all the equipment, and I began to ask a lot of questions. The difference between FM and AM. Well, I'm not going to go through the entire episode, but years later, FM still had not truly broken ground. We owned my partner and I, a few small AM radio stations. And I said, you know, FM is going to be the future. We can get them pretty inexpensive. It's a Milton. FM stands for free music. AM is the gold standard. And I said, I don't know. I think Americans want something better than that. And so, unfortunately, as good friends, we parted ways as I began to believe otherwise. And you know, free enterprise requires risk. So do you take everything you have and buy a radio station? Well, there's a little lady sitting over there, Tamar. He said, you don't have any money, you're just a disc jockey, which I was at the time. And I found a little radio station in Wisconsin, and they wanted $6,000 down. Exactly what Tamar had saved from being a school teacher. Well, she said, I'll give it to you. I said, no, I'll borrow it from you. So we wound up in this little town of 4,500 people. My high school had 5,000 kids. Well, I put on a suit like today, and I went out to sell advertising. The first place I went to was a hardware store. And I made my presentation. He started answering in German. I said, can't we speak English? He says, nein, ist besser in Deutsch. Oh my God, here I am, and they're probably the only Jew in this little town. The kids are wearing lederhosen, and the kids had a march there. What am I doing? No wonder I paid $6,000 to get it. As they say in the idiom, oi gewalt. Well, later on I began to acquire FM stations, literally on the cheap. High risk? Absolutely. But we bought a 100,000 watt FM in Minneapolis, St. Paul. You won't believe this. $10,000. And so the story began. We wound up with stations in New York and Los Angeles, and of course, Cleveland. Just a little backstory. How did we wind up in Cleveland, Ohio? Tamar's family is from Los Angeles and the wonderful area around San Diego as well. I had bought a radio station there, and at the last moment, the deal fell apart. Well, so be it. I was then at a broadcast convention in Chicago, and I used to smoke cigars until Tamar made me stop. And there was John Kluge. John was the chairman and principal of a company called Metro Media. His net worth when he retired in those days was about $7 billion. And he owned WHK and WMMS here. And I said, I understand you're going to sell one of your stations. He said, yeah, I can only own 7. I'm going to buy a station in Dallas, and I'm going to have to get rid of my smallest. I said, which is? Cleveland, Ohio. And I said, what are you asking for? He told me. I said, it's too much. He said, I'll hold some of your paper. In 15 minutes, we had a deal. And the reason John and I got along so well, at his first radio station in Washington, I was a GI daytime at the National Security Agency and a DJ at his station nighttime. And we used to talk every night about broadcasting and its future on FM. Now, I had to go home and tell Tamar one thing, 2 things. We're not going to San Diego or California. We're going to Cleveland. Whoa, that went over like a real lead bomb, to be honest with you. But like a good soldier, she came along. 40 years later, we're in Cleveland, Ohio. Tamar doesn't call this city Cleveland. She calls it my beloved Cleveland. She's so modest. I got to tell you how we met in college. I was producing a radio show, and she wanted to be an actress. She auditioned for us. She didn't get the part. But I said, why don't you stay after these auditions? I think I might help you with your programming. And that's how we met and fell in love and got married. Well, I want to thank all of you for being here to listen to some of this storyline, but it is really important to understand that as immigrants, we have opportunity, we have freedom, but we must take the risk to do so. A couple of decades ago in Japan, a very well-known author there wrote a book on the peoples of this earth. And when he came to the United States, he called the people of this country a mongrel nation. So tonight I just want to say, I'm very proud to be a mongrel American. Thank you.